Good morning. It's Holy Yidden. Today is Friday, the 28th of Iyar Koyach Iyar, the 19th of May. And the lime's on our mind, but I have to make another dedication first. Today is the yard site of a dear friend and neighbor to many of us, Jay Sachs, Yosef and Ze'ev Sachs, a Jew from Montreal. And as we said yesterday on the Gemara Chabura, he was part of the genesis of our Gemara Chabura. He was part of it when there was but one or two members. I believe, and Mark, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, this even predates Avodah Zarah in Shiva night. I think this was Maseches Rosh Hashanah. This was long ago. And he passed away tragically at a young age. And I have to say, he was a man that remains, in my mind, the ultimate model of how I don't want to say regular, because he was certainly not a regular person in any way, but how a regular average person living on planet Earth in 2020s, the 20 teens, can have a successful life and a beautiful family and choose to make incredible sacrifice to study Torah. I know he had other passions. He was very good at Rebel. You'll correct me. You'll fill me in a moment, because I forget the game that he was very good at. But hold on. No, 1 second. Hold on. Hold on. Rebel, give me 1 second, please. Wait. But from what I know is that he chose to seriously step back from his day-to-day occupation roles and choose to spend hours every day studying Torah. And he studied from the ground up. I remember the last season that he was here before his passing on Chavches Iyar, he shared with me, among other things, he shared with me that his plan was to hire schools from a Jewish day school and to ask them to teach him from ground up, first grade, second grade, third grade, because he wanted to have prowess and he wanted to be able to independently study from the original Hebrew texts. I know he had studied the entire Talmud with the Art Scroll, and I believe he was on Yerushalmi and Tanakh and Halacha and many, many, many works. And he really, I don't know anyone like him who mid-career took such a pivot and such a devotion to Torah. And as I've shared with his family, and I think I've shared here, our sages tell us that when a person passes on, Ashrei Misha Balakan V'Talmuda B'Yadei, the luckiest person is a person that has Torah study under their belt upon arriving to the Bezdin Shel Maila, because that is the truest currency in heaven. It's the Torah study and Torah knowledge we accumulate in this life, on this earth. And I'm confident that he was young and had many, many other merits, but he has this vast credit of Torah accumulated knowledge with great devotion. I remember he had notebooks, he would write, and really, really someone that I admired even in his lifetime, and certainly in his passing, we can honor his memory and pay tribute to a wonderful man, a man who really was a model of Torah study. I should also tell you that we would sit and schmooze and study, and it was towards the beginning of our building journey, and he was very, very gung-ho, and his he wanted to be a big part of it, and I hope that his neshama in Shemayim is helping pull the strings, most importantly for his family and for his friends. But I hope he's also cheering us on and getting us some heavenly support as our community continues to grow in the Torah study. And so let's dedicate today's learning for the yard site of Yosef Ben Zev J. Sachs. Now, Rebel, please fill me in. And I'm sorry for...
He was a bridge master, but what impressed me, as you say, unusual, is in Montreal. In his house, there's a room that looks like a room from a library, books from floor to ceiling, Sforim.
Yep. Yehei Zichrei Baruch. And
Amen.
And all right, now we can learn. Now we can learn some Gemara with that in mind. Again, also dedicating our learning for the health and well-being of the dear members of our chabura, only for health and happiness and healing, all that we need. We are studying Masechah. See, I don't even know if we said that we're studying the entire Talmud. I got carried away. We're studying the entire Talmud, one page, one line at a time. Presently, Maseches Pesachim, the first chapter, Yud Gimel 13a, turning to 13b. We're talking still about Bedikas Chametz and the schedule of Erev Pesach. And in particular, we were talking about the exact schedule. Do we give a buffer between the time that you can eat chametz and the time that you must burn chametz. And it was a machlekes in the Mishnah, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is inclined to give more space. We then found that Rav Nachman quotes the Rav and tells us the halacha lemaisa we follow. Rabbi Yehuda, we give an hour buffer between burning the chametz. Stopping to eat chametz and burning the chametz. And the Gemara yesterday went on to try to probe and figure out why we would actually be paskening like Rabbi Yehuda over Rabbi Meir, why we're giving that extra hour. And the assumption at this point is there must have been some kind of Mishnah or Brisa that supports that halachic position. And we found a very fascinating discussion about Shabbos, that's Pesach and Truma, and again the dialogue and the debate brings up some very fascinating topics. Ultimately, we say that we paskin like Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Huda, and for a moment we thought maybe it was about the fourth hour being the last hour to eat chametz, but the Gemara rejects that and says that when we say we follow the halacha of Rabbi Lazar, Ben Yehuda Ish Bar Toisa, it only meant for the purposes of the handling of Truma and to burn it before Shabbos, which therefore is going to lead us to further exploration, further attempts to make sense of the Pesach of Rav Nachman Amar Rav. And that's today's Gemara. That's what we're continuing. And we'll have the opportunity to encounter fascinating, interesting topics, interesting stories, things that will make us think and help us think. And so let's share the screen. Let's get started. And again, thank you all for being on board. And thank you for enduring my long-winded introduction over here today. So here we go. The Af Rebbe Sabr Lahad Rabbi Nachman. In truth, we could find precedent and support for the psak shared with us by Rabbi Nachman that we give an hour buffer between achilas chametz and the sreifa chametz, the beer chametz. Let's see. Omar Ravin Bar Rav Ada. Ravin Bar. That's the following. Folks, tell me in the sound. I'm getting noticed that it's hopping from different speakers. The sound sounds right on your end?
Yes.
Here we go. You recall that this is not the first time that we had Ravin Baravada telling us stuff that happened. No, something's going on over here. Hold on. I'm getting messages that my microphone keeps on changing. So let me see if we can. All right. For now, we're okay. Why is that happening?
Whatever it is, you're coming out clear here.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Now it's telling me we have the right mic on. Okay. Here we go. So we're going to tell a story of Rebbe and his psak, and we'll see if it supports the position of Rab Nachman quoting Rav. That Rebbe, Savar Lahad Rav Nachman, Rebbe also seemingly paskins the way Rav Nachman does.
Now we can't see you, Rabbi.
We know what he looks like. It's okay, Beryl.
Okay. No, but you know, Bernie, the movement of the thumb and the arm is important.
As I.
All right, now let's see.
It's the placement of the yarmulke that I'm looking at.
Right.
Still nothing?
No. Ben Gavir is famous for its off-center kippah.
Yeah.
I'm a chayet. All right. My computer is telling me that it has issues with my USBs. I don't know. We'll figure it out. If I can avoid troubleshooting it now, I suppose that would be best. All right, let's get it. Here is a testimony. Here is a story shared with us by Rabin Baravada. There was once a man. Shehivkid disakya meleya chametz. He left a disakya, which Rabbi Steinsaltz translates as a saddlebag. And Rashi basically explains in longer that that's what we're talking about. A saddlebag. Meleya chametz, that had tons of chametz in it. Eitzel Rabbi Yochanan chakoy ka'a. He kept it by Rabbi Yochanan chakoy. You know, the word by, they say, is not in the English language. It's a Yiddish word or a Jewish word. If you leave something by.
Right.
So he left something by Rabbi Yochanan in the custody of, in the jurisdiction of Rabbi Yochanan Chayka. Un kavua achbarim, rodents punctured it. V'haya chametz, mivatzveitz, v'yoytzei, and chametz was oozing out. I don't think that's what Rabbi Steinsaltz says, spilling out. Chametz was pouring out. Rashi ben akvu achbarim, v'haya nechsar, v'arba asar b'nisan haya v'chametz, v'zoyer l'vala Rabbi Leida imi mecharu mepnei chesroinei shel mafkid. So now we have an interesting question. Usually, when a person has something left in their jurisdiction, their responsibility is to do their very best to preserve the asset of the person who's left it with you. And so usually the best thing you could do is nothing. But on occasion, it would be better to sell the item so that there's some residual value versus to hold on to it till it becomes valueless or worthless. A good example might be, no examples. Anyways, I was thinking of certain cryptocurrency or who knows what, but anyways, beyond the scope. Rabbi, and now he wants to know, what do I do? What to do with this chametz? Can you eliminate chametz that's not yours? Can you destroy someone else's stuff? Rabbi, and he says, Rabbi, what do I do? Shari Shaina, first thing in the morning, before Shachris, I'm assuming.
Rabbi, can I ask you a question?
Yes, doctor.
Why can't you just cover up the holes?
I'm not certain if the oozing of the stuff is a substantive, irrelevant matter.
I mean, the fact
general
that there's
discussion.
there's comments in there, whether there's a hole or not.
Exactly. So your real question, which is my question, is why are we even talking about the way the chametz is oozing out? That's an interesting question. Let's see.
Because it seems to be that the only discussion is because the chametz was coming out. Otherwise, either there was no question or ask the question about.
So you're asking, why does the Gemara tell us this story?
I think I can ask an additional question. If it wasn't for the hole, what would happen with that chametz on the eve of Passover? I mean, it's somebody else's chametz. There is no hole, but it is chametz that has to be destroyed. And can one destroy what is deposited for safekeeping?
Yes.
Not.
Yes.
Exactly. So why bring up?
I'll tell you. I see some of the commentaries make a counterpoint. Not what we're thinking that the chametz oozing out is part of what's motivating this man to want to destroy the chametz or get rid of it. And had it not been oozing out, maybe he wouldn't get rid of the chametz. That's not the diuk. Everyone asked this question, doctor, so it's a very good question. But the answer was surprising to me too. Seems to be that it's saying even though the chametz was oozing out, that was not his motivation to do something. The fact that the achbarim were chewing was not a sufficient reason to manage or handle the chametz. That seems to be like the cost of doing business. Keep chametz long enough, it's going to have, mice are going to find it. That would not be sufficient motivation to sell it, to do something with it. But Pesach's arrival, it means that there's a ticking clock, and that when this clock strikes 12 or whatever the exact zman is, it goes from being worth whatever the value of grain is, or a tuna bagel, to being worth 0.
So I have another question.
Okay.
So my question now is this. Do you have an obligation? If somebody comes and gives you a package and says, hold it for me. And now Pesach comes and he hasn't picked it up yet. Do you have an obligation to open it up to find out if there's chametz in it?
That's an interesting question. That is a very interesting question. Meaning, how far is your responsibility? I suspect we might say it depends on the type of relationship you have with this item, but it's a good question. Let's wait till the end of the Gemara and then let's hold on to that question. It's a good one. How far? There's a lot to figure out about what the relationship is between a person that's holding onto a pikadon, and I don't mean a pikadon necessarily as a collateral, but if you're holding something, it's entrusted with you to maintain, to preserve, to watch. You know what today's best analogy would be to, or analog would be to this? Storage units. You have stuff in a storage unit. At a certain point, it becomes, Anyways, okay, let's see the story, and then we can revisit. It's an important question. Before Shachris, early in the morning, he says, Hamtain, wait, don't do anything to the chametz. And Rashi says, you know why he says, Hamtain, wait? Maybe the owners are going to come. They're going to be very hungry. Where's my tuna bagel I left with you 6 months ago? Good luck. And so you can't sell it. Okay, probably it was more like a bag of pretzels. Shniya, second hour. Amar Hamtain, he says you should yet wait. Shalishis, the third hour. Amar Hamtain, there's still ample opportunity for the owner to arrive and eat his pretzels. Revi'is, the fourth hour. Amar Hamtain, he said wait. Chamishis, the fifth hour arrives. Amar Loi, now Rabbi says, say Yumachreha Bashuk. Sell it now. What does this seem to tell us? That Rebbe was of the opinion that once the fifth hour strikes, you must stop eating chametz. Sounding like the opinion of Rebbe Yehuda, who says there is an hour buffer between eating chametz and getting rid of chametz. Let's read Rashi. Chamishis, the mehashla sulay achale, he can no longer consume it. I know, Rebbe Beryl, you're going to give us the answer, which is a good answer, but let's first see Rashi in the reason why this might be proved to Rebbe. Amar leit say bashuk. We have 1 hour left. It still can be sold. You still may do business. And so, ostensively, this seems like the opinion of Rebbe Yehuda. You cannot eat it. You could still handle it. Rebero, let's hear your answer. Why this is not a raya?
I'm gonna go where you don't want me to go.
Hold on, before you do that, tell me why this is not conclusively proof to Rebbe Yehuda. Tell me why maybe this doesn't prove that you have to stop eating chametz an hour before the zman habior, the time to burn it.
It's just another step of so many hours. Again, a border. What you have to do leading up to it. No, but my question is where you don't want to go. What does selling mean? One of our sales when you sell everything else?
No, it means you sold it to someone to chomp on those pretzels, or the tuna bagel, the 6-month-old tuna bagel. I'm just in love with that. All right. So seemingly, at the fifth hour, you can still own it. You can't eat it. So you have no choice but to sell it. That's what it sounds like. And here, it sounds like Rabbi Meir. The Gemara right away says, my love, the goyim. Surely, what do we mean over here? We're selling it to a Gentile. So you're doing commerce, but you're not going to eat it. Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rabbi Yosef. And this would be like the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. I'm sorry, Rabbi Yehuda. This would be like the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who says you got to wait 1 hour. You can have hana, you can sell it. I don't think you could pay a person $1 million to eat a 6-month-old tuna bagel, but that's why we have to revise our analogy to pretzels. Still pretzels, you can eat it for the right price. Maybe someone will buy it. Rav Yosef loy li Yisro. Actually, no. We mean to say this is the final hour that it can be eaten by a Jew, and this is consistent with Rabbi Meir. So all morning long, you need to wait for the owner to come. When you only have 1 hour left, go sell it to another Jew. He'll wolf it down as his last chametz, and you'll at least salvage some of the value of the owner. Rashi, Loyli Yisrael, Rabbi Meir. V'hachi kamarle, and this is the intention of Rebbe to this person. I sheyasai hashaita. Should you wait any further, lo mishkachas Yisrael dezaven, you'll not have another Jew to sell to. So therefore, you need to sell it before the end of the time of the beer.
Is it realistic to find a Jew who will be willing to buy, to give a good price for the leaven that is going to disappear?
You're probably not going to get a great price, but the alternatives are something or nothing. So you go into shul and you say, who wants to have a final bite of chametz before you can no longer eat chametz? Then guy says, I'll give you 25 cents for that tuna bagel. Okay, something. I think that's what we're saying. We're trying to salvage it. The reason why we say for a Jew or for a Gentile, just to clarify, is because if you're selling it to a Gentile, that means a Jew may no longer eat it. And so your only recourse is to sell it to a guy. If you're selling it to a Jew, it means that it is still within the permissible zone of time to eat chametz. And that's really, I believe, what it means when it says a Jew or a Gentile. Abaye, hold on 1 second. Abaye says, I don't like that. Eli Yisrael, if the meaning of Rebbe's instruction was that you're going to sell it to a Jew, then you should give him a better solution. Nishkale lenafshe. Let the holder of the pikadon take it himself, enjoy the bag of pretzels. Rashi nishkale lenafshe. And then he can give money to the owner. Once there's permission to sell it, make the poor guy, he's trying to do a mitzvah, he's holding on to something, make his life easy, let him eat it himself, and then life is easier. So the Gemara answers a fascinating answer, which leads us to a topic that is intriguing to us. Dr. Hammer has weighed in on, I believe, on this subject more than once, because the Gemara weighs in with Mishum Cheshada. The Torah is mindful of appearance. How is it going to look? It's going to look like self-dealing. That's why I never understand how in America, in the legal system, the executor of an estate has a lot of latitude and a lot of ways for them to make money themselves. I never understood how we have a system that's so fraught with room for appearance of suspicion. But anyways, let's go back to this issue. Mishum Shada. It would be highly inappropriate for the person that's holding the pikadon to pop it in his mouth and he's going to give money. There's a lot of room for trouble. The Tanya Brisa says, those who are responsible to collect and distribute funds to aniyim, that don't have any beneficiaries, they are allowed to make change. They're allowed to take the smaller coins and turn it into a larger single coin. But they're not allowed to make the change with their own money. Rashi, you know, you go to a pushka and a pushka is full of pennies, hard to manage. But you can take all those 100 pennies and turn it into one single dollar. It's a lot easier to manage. Okay, Rashi has another problem. When they wait, they can become rusty. So silver has more of an enduring storage than a chayshes. But that should only be done to a third party, not the collector himself. He shouldn't take 100 pennies and take $1, because that doesn't look right. What about a person that collects food? As you may recall, we've encountered this Mishnah. There were a few different types of charitable collections that were made on a city level or on a village level. There was the collection of funds at certain points in the week, and then there was the collection of actual food. And there was different beneficiaries depending on how extremely needy and impoverished individuals were. So a person who's collecting food, and there is no recipient. So what do? You have all this food, it's going to go bad. You can only hold on to a tuna bagel so long. You may sell it to a third party. But he's not allowed to buy it for himself. We should be clean. We shouldn't even allow for the appearance of impropriety. Rashi tamchoy machal lechem umine machal shegavim lechalek. Again, food eventually could go bad. So the suspicion is not that the person took without paying, but who sets the price? In the market sets the price, supply and demand. But if you can name your own price, what are the odds that you're going to name the best price to take into account the circumstances of the kahal or the individual? At the very least, that would be the appearance. So the guy similarly has a pikadon. He's holding on to that tuna bagel. Well, actually, it sounds like it's a saddlebag full of tuna bagels. Every tuna bagel retails at around $15.99 today in a Brooklyn bagel shop, at least. And if you got 30 of those, Ellie, what's the math? 30 times $15.99. We're talking about a few dollars. And
30 times $15.99?
I'm
Hold
sorry?
on. 30 times $15.99, you said?
$15.99 times 30.
$47.97.
400 and almost $500. If we can only get one more cent for each of those tuna bagels, right? Anyways, then we'd have a pretty $500. So we're talking about a significant amount of money. So now let's be honest, Ellie, a tuna bagel, you might have bought it for $15.99. 3 weeks later, Erev Pesach, you're not going to get $15.99. You're not going to get $15.99. You're going to get a much less promising price.
At 3 weeks old, the tuna is going to be really bad.
Yeah.
I'll tell you honestly, Rabbi, Friday before Erev Pesach, I'm going to be honest with you. There's a place in Borough Park called 10 a.m. Bagel. I happened to walk in there. I spent $10 on breakfast. It was all chametz, but it was breakfast for $10. It was full. A lot of Uber Eats customers, but it was full.
Interesting.
Rabbi.
Hold on one second. So now you have these bagels. You want to salvage its value. You're not going to get $15.99 for your 3-week-old bagel Erev Pesach, but you need something. So who's going to decide how much it's worth? You? 1 cent. I would sell it for. If Mark couldn't be paid to accept these tuna bagels, 3-week-old tuna bagels Erev Pesach. So obviously it's going to be hard to get a price. If you go to the market, you say, who wants a 3-week-old tuna bagel 1 hour before Pesach? Okay, someone's going to offer a dime, a nickel, whatever. So there you have it. It was established. It was, but you didn't make up your own price. I'm sorry, Mark?
At least the bag of pretzel might still be edible.
Let's go back to the bag of pretzel. I get 30 bags of pretzels. They cost $1.69 in the store. Erev Pesach, you're not going to get $1.69, but maybe you could sell them for 30 cents a piece. Give it to the kids to have last chametz before Pesach. So, anyways, the point is, maybe we could reasonably say that Rebbe was saying the last hour, the 5th hour, you're allowed to eat chametz, and that would be like Rabbi Meir, but you got to sell it. You got to cash in. You can't do it yourself. That wouldn't look right. And so you're going to go to the market, and whatever you can manage to collect in this last minute, you will do.
Rabbi.
Yes.
What if the chametz is going up in value, like the jelly candies in Israel where there's none? How does it change the situation, or does it?
Again, I'm adding details for the fun of it. The point is, you're going to get your best price to try to help the person conserve some of his assets. That's the point. But you can't do it too soon because maybe the person didn't want it to be sold. Maybe he wants to wolf down 30 bags of pretzels right on Erev Pesach. But when there's only 1 hour left, at that point, Rebbe told him to sell it. Our question now is, was he telling him to sell it in a time that you're allowed to eat chametz, or did he only permit him to sell it once chametz was entirely prohibited? And by extension, however you understand the story, that would be our understanding of how Rebbe would paskin in our Mishnah. Do you need to wait an hour or not? That's really the bottom line. And we have a machlokes in understanding the story. The way the story was told, it's not clear. And so we have 2 different ways of understanding it. Either Rebbe said to sell to Jews, or he said to sell to Goyim. We thought the fact that the guy couldn't sell it to himself is proof you cannot sell it to a Jew because he cannot eat chametz. And to that Abaye responds, I think it was Abaye, no, there's no proof that we mean to sell it to a Gentile. Maybe you could sell it to a Jew. You just can't self-deal. You can't sell it to yourself. And that is this story at this point. Now,
Rabbi,
once again,
if you sell it to a Jew, you're just transferring the problem. What are you solving by selling it to a Jew?
No. If the Jew decides to give money, you've managed to salvage a degree of the asset. The issue here is there's an asset with a ticking ticking clock, and in 1 hour it goes from being worth 30 cents to 0 cents. So we need to salvage as much as possible of this person's asset. That's what's going on. How are you going to salvage the asset? By finding someone that's willing to buy it. Why would a Jew buy an asset that's a ticking time bomb? If he was hungry, he wanted to have one last bite of chametz before Pesach starts. We could think of a reasonable situation why a person would buy chametz. All the time we have people that eat chametz or Pesach before the zman avir, before the zman of soif zman achilas chametz, right? That's something that happens all the time. And on the contrary, in a way, the pizza shops do better selling chametz erev Pesach than any other day because everyone has already purged the chametz from their homes. And so if you want to have chametz, you're going to have to go to the store. And there's a lot of demand. So we could reasonably conjure a scenario where you can get a good price on these chametz items in the last hour that's allowed to be eaten. So who did Rebbe hold like? That's another word that you'll never say in English. Who did Rebbe hold like? Rabbi Meir or Rabbi Yehuda? And so at this point, it's ambiguous. We've made a strong case that maybe Rebbe actually holds like, we introduced it to say he holds like Rabbi Yehuda, and we had a solid pushback, making it seem like he might paskin like Rabbi Meir, that there is no break, and you can eat chametz up until the time you have to burn it. Now, this story was conveyed to us by Ravin bar Rav Ada. We only have the amount of information he shared, and we're trying to read into the story based on how he presented. This is not the only time that we have two. We know that Rebbe Yehuda Hanassi had more than one student. He had a number of students. And at this point, another student of Rebbe chimes in and really helps us resolve the question. Omar le Rav Ada bar Masna le Rav Yosef. Rav Ada bar Masna. So we had Rav Ada, we had Ravin bar Rav Ada, and we have Rav Ada bar Rav Masna. So Ravin bar Ada and Ada bar Masna. Rav Ada, here's the conversation. Here's the dialogue. It's in the base medrash, apparently, of Rav Yosef. We have Abaya talking, and maybe Rav is around there, or maybe not. So Rav Ada chimes in and says, no, you're missing something. Beferish Amrslan. Rebbe told us clearly. Say, Umoichron Lagoyim Kirebi Yehuda. I think I made a mistake. No. I made a very not a conceptual mistake, but a historic mistake. I don't think Rav Ada bar Masna was the same era as Rav Ada bar Avin, who we quoted, or who did we quote earlier? Whoever we quoted earlier, Ravin bar. This was not his contemporary, but he had the tradition, because the base medrash of Rav Yosef would have been too long, too far removed from the base medrash of the students of Rebbe, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, the student of Rav Yosef tells him, you're forgetting a detail of the story as it was conveyed to us. You told us. That was my mistake. I thought he was saying that Rebbe said. We know the way the story went. Rebbe said, say umaychron lagoyim. Rebbe Yehuda, he explicitly said, sell it to a Gentile. And so Rebbe explicitly stated that he was paskening like Rebbe Yehuda. So how does Rebbe Yosef not know a detail that his student knows? Rashi tells us a tragic story. Rav Yosef chala. Rav Yosef came sick. V'shachach talmudai, and he lost his hard drive. He forgot much of his Torah study. Ula'achar zman, k'shohaya machlif dvarav. And so he resumed his kayach, and a lot of his information came back, but he would still occasionally mix things up. His students helped him remember and relearn the things that he had forgotten. And so Rav Yosef originally is the one who told them that he had a tradition, that Rebbe didn't just say sell it, he said sell it to a Gentile following Rebbe Yehuda. Unfortunately, he forgot that detail, and so he was dialoguing with his students about this topic, and he forgot this one data point, and therefore he could ask the question. But once the student filled him in, it's clear that Rebbe Paskin's like Rebbe Yehuda. So this little dialogue has it all: history, psychology, commerce, the humanity of our sages. And so this is like a fascinating and beautiful bite of the Talmud. If I had to, if someone were to ask me, Rabbi, I haven't studied Talmud yet, would you mind teaching me a little snippet of the Talmud? This might be a contender for one of those things, because it brings it's it's a well-rounded, well-balanced, and gives us a little bit of a flavor of the intergenerational dialogue and analysis that occurs in the Talmud. And there you have it.
Also, we learn when people get older, they forget.
And sometimes a person could forget.
Has a very close connection to me.
Well, here we're not connecting it to age; we're connecting it to illness. But I hear your point. And so there we go. I'm Rav Yosef. We're not quite done. We're done, but we're not done. I'm Rav Yosef. Come on, Oz, let's Shmai to the Rebbe. Rav Yosef now has his own analysis of our Mishnah. Come on, Oz, Shmai to the Rebbe. Who did Rebbe really paskin like when he said to sell the chametz? Now he says, "Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel." You follow the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. The Tanan Amafked Peiros Eitzel Chaver. A person gives fruits to their friend. Afilu Hein Abudim. Even if they are Abudim, Rashi Nechsarim v'Holchim, they are diminishing, they are deteriorating. Lo Yiga Bahen, you should never touch them. Okay, this is not the same Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, and Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. This is another topic. This is on the topic of Hashavas Aveda and the management of a pikadon. So when a person has, and we're going to learn about this in Mitzvah Hashem, right? There's vast discussions in, is it Baba Kama? There's vast discussions about what to do if you have a pikadon, if you have a item left with you, or a mitzvah. You find something. What do you do? There's vast discussions in the Babas. So here, Rabbi Yosef comments that who was Rabbi following when he instructed the person to sell? He was following Rabbi Gamliel because we have a question in Amafked Peiros. Even if they're deteriorating, what do you do? Right, so in Baba Mitzvah, what do you do? I feel either they're deteriorating, don't touch them. Shimon Gamliel says you have two options. Either you sell it, or it ultimately becomes entirely worthless. Clearly, Rebbe here was embracing the viewpoint of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, not the Tanakama, that says that to mitigate a total loss, you should sell the item that's in your possession. Right? Because chametz also is avudin, becoming lost. Abaye retorts, surely you know that we were told on this topic the following. When do we say that you're allowed to handle it, you're allowed to sell it or touch it? I'm sorry, when do they say loishanu? When do they say not to touch the item? If there is only the average anticipated deterioration. But if they're really dropping in value, then you can sell it. Here they are deteriorating. So let me just back up here for a moment. We say even if they're deteriorating. We didn't say what type of a deterioration we're talking about. Total deterioration, the common degrading of an item over time. I think the word is downgrading. Degrading, I don't know. Anyways, okay. So fruits, with the passage of time, start to ripen. A certain amount of them get carted off by wildlife. I don't know. So the rabbis say, if it's just undergoing the average regular attrition that you would anticipate to any product, that doesn't mean all of a sudden you're entitled and empowered to start dealing business, selling and buying an item that's not yours. That's anticipated, no matter if it's in your jurisdiction or someone else's jurisdiction, you can't just start selling something off. But if it starts really, really losing value, then of course you can sell it bebezdin. And so our case of Rebbe, who he says you got to sell the chametz, it would be consistent. Not only, I'm sorry, one more second, with Rebbe Shimon Gamliel, it's even consistent with the rabbis. Not the detail of selling in bezdin, but the fact that you need to sell it. Professor.
What is the role of Bezdin in this story? That is, before we were talking about selling on the market, and the market
Right.
was behind the price. Now the Bezdin is in the picture. Do they market the product, or how do they interfere? What is their role?
It appears, I mean, I'll give you a superficial answer, which is that in a way, even in our story of Rebbe, he was selling it with the Bezdin sanction. The Bezdin was signing off on it. So I believe, generally speaking, a Bezdin is meant to oversee commerce and matters of business. So in a minimalistic sense, we might be saying that you should just sell it with the Bezdin's oversight, not just on your own. But it seems like there were towns and times where the Bezdin had a more active role in selling and appraising and assessing certain items at certain junctures in time. And so most likely, assuming the Bezdin has this ability to appraise and to sell as a Bezdin's auction, so then it would be with their oversight. So we need to dig a little deeper until when and how Bezdin would do, but it probably would vary from place to place. But the point is, you shouldn't just do it on yourself. And again, it's another level of protection from self-dealing or from abuse of someone else's items. So it has to be with the oversight and the blessing of Bezdin. There's more to say on the subject, but that would be the simple let me just see one thing. Let's look at the Rambam. Interesting. Hold on. Just looking for a. Here, so I opened up the Code of Jewish Law on this topic. The Shach. Bear with me. I'm sorry. I lost the place here. How did that happen? One second. I'm sorry. I have to redo this. They lost my place. And bear with me if you don't mind. Hazayin. Oh, that's what happened. I'm not sure why it does that. Here we go. All right. Yeah, no more substantial information over here. The point is to sell it under the oversight to make sure that there was not abuse of this role of protecting the item. So the bottom line is Rebbe was following a universal principle. If something was entirely becoming devalued, of course, you'd have to sell it to salvage the value. Let's just look fast at the language of the Rambam, who nicely summarizes this halacha. If you leave items in the care of your friend, or your friend leaves items in your care, the watcher should not touch them. Even though there is a downgrading of them. When do we say that you're not allowed to touch them? Again, this is our very discussion here, quoting Baba Metzia, when there's just the average regular breakdown. But if it's more than the average, sell it with the oversight or with the bezin, because you're essentially preserving your friend's lost, diminishing asset. But here's the interesting thing. And again, this is not really from our Gemara, but just showing you, if you don't know the nature of the grain, he says you're going to have to sell it to a kohen, because maybe it is truma. All right, that concludes a lengthy discussion in our Gemara, a multi-day discussion about the schedule of Erev Pesach, and particularly that extra hour. As you may recall, there was that extra hour, according to Rabbi Yehuda, not of our mayor, which led us through a variety of discussions, starting with how much time does a person make a mistake? And it led us to comparing and contrasting those halachas with the halachas of testimony. We had Abaya's very minimalistic variation of the margin of error, maybe no time to a moment or half an hour. We had Rabba's, or an hour. We had Rava's analysis of the time in a more expansive way, 2 hours minus a fraction, or 3 hours minus a fraction, as being the variation of making mistakes. And then we ultimately come to the Psak Halacha. We have, we just had Rav being quoted by Rav Nachman Paskening, like we follow Rabbi Yehuda. We spent a little bit of time trying to see where and why he paskins as such. And ultimately we close out saying that Rebbe too paskined that way. He clearly said that you should sell to a Gentile in the 5th hour when you cannot eat it, showing us that there's an hour buffer. And we closed out by trying to figure out if Rebbe was taking an extreme position by allowing the person that's holding it because to sell. And we pretty conclusively show that no, it is a universal value, that if something is going to become worthless with zero value, then one would be allowed to sell it, but only in the last moment, lest the owner encounter it and actually wanted to eat it. Imagine you're starving and you're traveling a multi-day journey, and all you have in mind is that tuna bagel that your friend is holding on to, and you arrive home with 3 hours till Pesach, and the guy says, I just sold it. You can imagine how disappointed the guy would be. But in that final hour, it's do or die. It's now or never. And therefore, you can sell it. That concludes that discussion. Now you might remember the Mishnah talked about how do we know it's time to start getting rid of the chametz or to stop eating the chametz. We had those 2 disqualified loaves of bread that were placed on the pillar, the platform, and when one was removed, you knew that it was time to start, and then when 2 were gone, you knew it was time to burn. So the Gemara is going to discuss that, and I'm just debating now if we should start looking at that now, or we should call it a day right here and start this fresh subject on. Mark, you got to go. It's almost Shabbos. What time is it in Israel?
I got 2 hours. I got to start cooking though.
You cook a tuna bagel or some pretzels?
Chicken.
Chicken, okay. So our Mishnah says, we'll just start the first thing just to refresh our memory. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, shtei chalas v'chulu. Rabbi Yehuda taught that their 2 chalas were placed on the pillars. Tana kamed Rabbi Yehuda. A brisa was conveyed in the presence of Rabbi Yehuda in the following language: Al gav ha'itzdaba, on top of the itzdaba. How did our Mishnah read? Amar lei, v'chilat tzniya tzarech. Rabbi said, hold on a second. Why would we hide it? Tani al gag ha'itzdaba, on the top. Gav could mean on the sitting part, which is lower down. Rabbi Yehuda corrected the reader of the brisa to say it should say al gag ha'itzdaba. And now, out of curiosity, let's take a fast peek at the Mishnah, which is right here, thankfully, from last time. Munachais al gag ha'itzdaba. Our Mishnah reads gag, not gav, which means that our Mishnah is consistent with Rabbi Yehuda's way of explaining and understanding the Mishnah. Again, its objective was to be visible. Now let's talk a little more about these benches. Actually, no, we're gonna wait till Monday. So Mirza Hashem Monday, we're gonna have a wonderful opportunity to explore the architecture of the Beis Hamikdash, and in particular, the way we have these bench-like structures that were apparently a central feature, especially of the second temple after, and certainly Herod's temple. There's a lot of discussion in the Gemara generally about the design of that temple, and there's vast references to these stubs or the itztabas that were used, and so Mirza Hashem will explore that on Monday. Until then, my dear friends, thank you for joining. Thank you for making this a very enlightening, thought-provoking, and in-depth exploration of the Talmud. And having a wonderful Shabbos.
Shabbos, a good
Health and
Chodesh.
happiness and all types of good news. Shkoyach. Rabbi
Absolutely.
Shalom Ber.
Recording off, Rabbi.
In a moment, whenever everyone has their final comments, we're going to end this link, and you're invited to rejoin to study today's Chumash with Rabbi Shalom Ber.
Rabbi, yarmulke in
Yes.
front.
Eli, you can't convert me to be Sephardic all in like one day.
Trying.
It's
I'm
a
trying,
gradual
I'm trying.
process.
Slowly.
All right. Anyone else? Remark, a good Shabbos. Send the regards to
Ali
the
will
whole
take one vus away from vus.
Yes. Have a Shabbat
All right.
Shalom, guys.
Good Shabbos. Good
Shabbos.
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 Shabbos.